12:30 on a Tuesday afternoon, and I can't believe that another week has gone by on this beautiful planet and in this wonderful world. Welcome everybody to another weekly episode of the Mindset Michele TV show. And I've got this extra special guest today, Karen Chaston. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Michele. Thank you for inviting me.
It's so lovely to have you on the show today, and it's so incredible to know a little bit about your story, and I'm so excited to unpack some more of that today. For those that don't know Karen, she's the founder and co-founder and owner of the Chaston Centre, an award-winning author of over 8 books. She's been on stage with people like Marianne Williamson and what was the other name? Jamie Lee Curtis, and she has this wealth and depth and breadth, and she's a subject matter expert in the area of loss and grief and looking for the gifts in that. But there's so much more to her story, and I'd love for you to share that with us now. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Michele. Well, long journey, believe it or not. Back in 2012, even 2013, I was a CFO of a publicly listed company. But how did I become a life coach who specialises in loss, an author and a speaker? Well, I'm going to take you all back very quickly to the 10th of July, 2011. It was a Sunday morning, and my husband and I woke up thinking we were literally going to be having a lazy day at home. So within minutes, I was running out the back door, looking at my 27-year-old son, Dan, lying there in the fetal position. We thought he was unconscious, though within minutes the paramedics arrived and they said those words that no mother, no parent ever wants to hear. I'm sorry, madam, he is dead, and he probably has been for several hours. So what did I do with that? You know, what did I do? Being my tough, ambitious CFO self, the day after Dan's funeral, I went straight back to work, eating more, drinking more, and working even harder. And that's what you do. That's what we're all told to do. Just keep busy, give it time, everything will be okay. You know, so I shoved it down more and more and more. And then 15 months later, when my company was merging with another, they said to me, Karen, you're not going to be CFO in the new company, but we really want you to come with us. You're going to be doing everything you're doing now plus more. Please come with us. And they gave me the greatest gift that anyone can give another person. They gave me a contract that was for 2/3 of what my current contract was. And 48 hours, I was so angry. I had this email from the CEO 2 years earlier telling me that I was the oracle of the company and how much they loved me and all this sort of stuff. And I was like, oh my God. But it was the greatest gift they gave me because it assisted me to wake up from what I now call my Groundhog Day days, where I wasn't looking after me. I wasn't looking after my family, my relationships. Sure, from the outside, I looked really successful, but I wasn't. So I chose redundancy, and that's when I started on this journey, the journey that I call the journey to finding my best friend, which is me. The journey to becoming your own best friend. So that's me in a nutshell. And then along the way, I became a life coach, and I specialize in help in loss. But not only, and people will think, oh, wow, you're a CFO, you're a CPA, you have a master's in accounting, and now you're a life coach. But believe me, I actually also have my people and profits connection, which I take into businesses to help them to realize that their employees are their greatest assets.
Wow, thank you, Karen. What an incredible journey, and my condolences again for your loss. And I can't even begin to imagine the shock of finding him there and then realizing that he'd passed over. And what courage and what strength to be able to share your story now and to share it in such a way where you are talking about not just moving on or going on in that busyness that you initially did and that many people would initially do, because it's such a shock to the system, but then using your experiences to understand that it actually was gifts to help you to discover you some more and move more into who you are.
Yes. And, you know, look, it is sad that Dan's not here, especially when you see his twin brother and older brother and half-sister, you know, moving on with their lives and building their own families and all those sort of things. But the beauty is that I spend more time with Dan than I do with any of his siblings, which is, I know everyone goes, how? And I'm like, seriously, he is the co-founder of the Chaston Centre. The way he has guided me, the way he literally helps me write all my books. He is with me all the time, and he's planting these crazy ideas in my head all the time. But I wasn't aware of any of this. Like, sure, I had sort of a spiritual aspect to me before, but now I totally get it. And I know that I did Dan's passing the hard way. And that's why I created these programs to assist people to do it an easier way. It doesn't have to be hard. You know, we really do have a lack of loss intelligence. And I feel that Dan and I are here to assist people to make it easier, to find that better way. And it's something I always did in my corporate life. I was always, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be an easy way. Let's find that better, easier way. And that's what I always did. So it just sort of made sense that after doing it such a hard way and ignoring it and shoving down, you know, my feelings with food and alcohol, the funny thing is I don't even drink now. I stopped drinking in 2018 and I don't miss it. I don't crave it. I am loving life without it. And I used to drink a bottle of wine a day. So it's not as though it was, you know, most people are like, who knew me in those days, are like, Karen, I can't believe you don't drink anymore. And it's like, it was easy.
Well, it's that choosing you over those addictions and those habits, which many of us have reached those kind of turning points in this type of work that we do. Mm-hmm. You would also have, I imagine, this incredible and really insightful, what does success then mean to you? You'd have a very different approach, I feel, to many others on the show.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's completely different to what it was in my corporate life. So let's briefly touch on that. Success in my corporate life, and I'm really glad you asked me this question. Let's actually go back there, because I ask people this question also, because I don't think anyone takes the time to actually sit down and go, what does success mean to me? We take on everyone else's sort of interpretation on it, and we sort of run our life a little bit like that. And that's what I did. You know, success to me was all outer success, you know, and people from the outside would have thought I was successful. You know, I had the career, I had the great salary, I had the house, the car, the overseas trips, you know, all those sort of things that a lot of us would define as success. And then you would go, you know, is that success? Whereas now I know that was not success. You know, my relationships were in tatters when, you know, when Dan passed, when I left. My health was in tatters. You know, I was heading at 1,000 miles per hour towards type 2 diabetes, a heart attack, stroke, possibly even death, because I literally was working myself to death. I was working 6 days a week. I wasn't looking after myself, and my relationships were just there. Whereas now success means to me taking time to deep dive into every single area of my life. And I had no conscious every area of my life when I sort of started hearing about this. I was going, what's all that about? You know what I mean? It's my life. But no, and I created in the Chaston Centre, we have a wellness wheel which has 9 areas of life. And I purposely put 9 into it because I wanted people to understand that 9 is about, you know, new beginnings. It's the end of a cycle. It's 9 is, you know, it takes 9 months for us to birth, and not only a baby, but a new idea, and to bring it into fruition and all that sort of stuff. So it is about understanding every single area of your life, consciously spending time in them every week. Sure, it won't be the same amount as time, but as long as you touch on it and you go, do you know what? This is rolling along nicely. This is where I am. This is what I want to do. And I'm slowly closing that gap to being where I want to be in that area of my life. And that's what success now means to me, especially relationships. You know, Dan died. We thought a healthy 27-year-old son went out with his mates the night before. I lent him $200. I wish I hadn't. I wish he would have stayed home that night. But, you know, and it's just like understanding that you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. You are only guaranteed today. So success means making sure that today is lived and loved for yourself and for everyone else around you.
And I love how you so beautifully shared that, and thank you so much for taking people on that journey. And it's very true. Many people watching will be at work or in a job where they're working very hard, and they feel that they need to work hard, and of course to pay the bills, for their family, for all of those very valid outside reasons. But you're right, we only have a limited time in this life and in this planet. And if your whole time is spent looking outwardly, then, you know, you can miss out on that beauty. And I love that definition of success then, where you're looking inwardly and looking at the 9 different areas.
Thank you.
What would you say then would be some key tips that you might share with other people around how they can also build this mindset for success? I mean, not everybody would look at loss and grief, and people are in some ways in a bit of pain, whether they realise it or not, with COVID and things that have been happening, because their lives have changed. So what type of secrets or recommendations would you give to people to recognise, firstly, the grief that they may have for the old life that they've left behind? Looking for those gifts that not everybody kind of goes, well, actually, there's 2 sides to everything. Grief has a gift and gift has a grief. So there's both elements to it. What kind of tips would you recommend for people?
Well, in my gift of loss process, I have a 5-step process, right? So I'm going to really quickly go through that, because I think this, well, actually, I don't think, I know this works for any kind of loss. And that's why it doesn't matter if it's a death of a loved one, a divorce, your job, your health, your wealth, your pets, or any of the minor ones that have come up in this pandemic. You know, loss of freedom, choice, status, identity, changing work conditions, recreational and social activities. There's so many things that have happened. But one thing that I have found with every single person that I work with, loss of identity is at the top of the scale, because we lose ourselves throughout our life. We come into the world where we're perfect and we're loving and we're joyous. Just look at children. You know, look at young children, how quickly they move through their emotions. Like, and they literally, one minute they're crying, the next minute they're laughing, the next minute they're joyous and they're running around, and they really have just moved on. We don't do that. We carry on things and we hold them, and that's what stops us, and that's what helps us to actually lose our identity. Whereas I feel that our life is all about us coming back to us. And that's why the first step in my gift of loss process is to stop. Isn't it funny that in COVID it was, let's all stop. And look how the world started to heal, and look at how communities, families sort of came back together. They started doing things together and they started to come back together. So that's the gift in it, is in the stopping you get to go, what does this mean for me now? What does this mean for me moving forward? And we've got to ask ourselves those questions, because the quality of our life will always come down to the quality of the questions we ask ourselves. And if we don't ask ourselves questions, we'll never, ever reveal that answer that is waiting to come to us. And from that answer, we then get our action steps and the way forward. And each action steps takes us closer and closer and closer, not only to ourselves, but to our dream life. So the first step is to stop, and it's to go inside. And let's face it, most of us don't like going inside. There's this big dark unknown where we actually are going to find our emotions, and we're going to find things that are going to come up that we haven't dealt with. But that's the gift, because when we deal with those things and we grab those lessons, you know, since I've been on this journey, I've really started to look at the English language and break down our language. Lessons. When we look for our lessons, it's less on us. The word tells us less on us. which is so beautiful. But that's the first step, is to stop and to deep dive into us. The second step is to accept.
I just wanted to say there with that first lesson, it's such a beautiful way, and thank you. I hadn't heard that less on us.
No, not many people have. It was guided to me. Then popped it into my head one day.
I love it. It's a really, I love the plays on English language, and that's a beautiful one, less on us. Because many people, when they do start to go inside and start to look at themselves, they can actually feel quite uncomfortable. And I do encourage with people and companies we work with, helping them to understand that it does take courage to look at it, and it can feel uncomfortable. But I really love that less on us, because it's a great way for people to then understand that it may be uncomfortable, it may this, it may that. But once you release some of that, once you release through your awareness and your understanding what is happening in your life and what it means for your future, then you can actually take control of it, and you can start to manage it, rather than it being kind of like, you know, you don't want to see it, you don't want to hear it, you don't want to know it. Yeah. And so I love that, you know, that stopping is so important to then be able to look inside and to uncover it more. And step number 2
was the accept, right? So in Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's 5 stages of grief, acceptance is the 5th. Now I've made it the 2nd, right? And the reason that it's the 2nd is until you accept things, accept what is happening, and realize that most of it is out of your control, you cannot be able to move on, because you're too busy fighting it. And you're too busy in the negative emotions, which keep you down and keep you, you know, depressed and angry and all of those sort of things. But once you come to acceptance, which is actually quite high up on the Hawkins, you know, scale and map of consciousness, you actually come to acceptance and you go, right, okay, this is what's happened. So how can I now make the most of it? How can I now make this be a pivotal moment in my life where I know that I'm going to be different, I'm going to move forward, right? There's no going back. You know, there's no bouncing back. You know, it's about bouncing forward, and we've even jot of holding yourself forward, because that's what life's about. But it's in the acceptance stage that you also start to take responsibility for the things that have happened. You know, if it's a relationship broke down, and everything is a relationship broke down, whether it's with a person, place or thing, there is always your part of your responsibility, and you're going to love this one too. So when we're in blame, it's another word I break down. And you go, how can you break down blame? I'm like, seriously? I can break down blame. So there's the blah, which is all the blah, 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 blah. Or then there's me. Right? So when we're in the blah, 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 which a lot of us are in, especially at the moment, we've forgot about me. So we've forgot about taking responsibility for ourselves. We've forgotten about what was my part in all of this, or how could have I done better, or how could I have not said that or not done that, and all that sort of thing, or reacted differently. There's so much in the acceptance, which then brings you into the next one, which is to identify. And that's where you do the deep dive into you. You do the deep dive into everything about yourself. You identify where you're at. You identify where you want to be. You also identify your hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and realize that because of what's gone on, they're now going to be different. You know, like overseas trips, you know, things like that. You know, and it's all about those sort of things. So it is about acceptance. Identifying, because once you identify, you then can complete. And I
really love those 2 parts. I was just going to say the acceptance part is also with the work that we do around those thoughts and the feelings and the emotions. I know that people typically go, oh, you know, I don't get angry, and then you show them an example where they've got angry and they'll go, oh, yes, I do get angry, but it was an exception, or it was a this, or it was a that. So that acceptance that everybody actually has all of the different human traits, and nobody's an exception, is, I find, a really powerful step with the work. And I love how you've then integrated it with the blah me, because that self-focus to then really understand, well, actually, I do get upset, I do this, I do that, I do whatever, I do get frustrated. All of those, again, very normal human emotions, but we build these constructs around them, which I love this model that you're sharing, because it's a wonderful construct to support people to understand as they're doing that self-reflection and that self-work, how to then frame it in a way that, yes, this is normal, everybody does this, and everybody has all of these traits. Yeah. It's a fabulous model.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. And the complete stage is where you actually continue on the identifying, but you come to a conclusion of what things you'd like to apologise for, things you'd like to forgive, and things you'd like to acknowledge. Because that then completes like your past. And obviously it's not just a one-off exercise, but if you look at it loss, we'll look at, you know, we all will have multiple major losses throughout our lives. We're not getting beyond that. You know, any of those 40 plus different loss events, we're all going to have them. Sure, some are more minor than others, but we're all going to have them. And because we don't complete them, we drag along with us these emotions or these feelings or these resentments and all those sort of things, or this blame and all those things. So once we complete them, we then can move on, and then we can truly, and the fifth step is to pivot. And the pivot stage is where you bring in those 9 areas of life, and that's when you design where your dream life moving forward, because you've removed all that sort of baggage. And it's really important for everyone to understand that none of us have a birth certificate with an expiry date on it. None of us, right? None of us. The date has been set though. We don't know when it is, but the date has been set. So it's about us understanding that when we release all of these things, right, we are then set ourselves up so that when we do leave this realm and go on to our next one, we won't have the regrets. We would have done the things that we came here to do. And at the end of the day, whether you believe it or not, it doesn't really matter. We all are spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are all here for spiritual lessons. And the more we understand our spiritual lessons, the things will stop happening. You know, how often do you have the same thing happen 3 or 4 times just with a different person who looks differently, but they treat you the same way, but they're giving you these gifts. And I know it doesn't seem like a gift, but when you start to focus on the fact that nothing happens to you, it happens for you, you start to view life differently. And you start to live in a more calmer way. And I truly believe that's what this pandemic is all about. It's about bringing us all to love, to gratitude, and to forgiveness, and to understand that it doesn't matter what we look like on the outside, we are all basically the same.
What a beautiful framework and a beautiful way of you've Lynn articulated of looking at the pandemic and what was essentially a worldwide pause in many ways of asking people to go inside and, you know, to really think about relationships and think about climate change and all of the great issues of our time, which, you know, in even maybe 5 years, they'll look back on and go, well, you had all that time during the pandemic to do this self-reflection. What did you come out? And I love that that last stage was then around the pivoting and looking at the 9 areas. I too believe the more that people look and have that self-knowledge and self-awareness, the greater they are living their own lives and fulfilling their own potential.
I totally agree. And I've noticed the people who are struggling are the ones who have never done any self-reflection. They find it hard to go inside, and they just think it's all baloney and stuff like that, which is fine. But when you actually do realize that, you know, we are all amazing people, and we have all of these guides, and we have all of these loved ones who are our team supporting us, it really does make whatever you're going through a lot easier, a lot easier.
And I really agree. The idea that you have a limited amount of time, and in many ways, in fact, I remember one time I heard that a definition of karma, that it was unlearned lessons. And that really, like your definition, really switched it for me, because yes, you do have the same thing happen over and over. I've even had the same thing happen in different countries with different people. I'm gone, really? And so it's that self-introspection and becoming aware, not just of what's going on, but I love your part about the responsibility. What role did I have in actually creating and promoting and allowing it to happen? And through that awareness process, and that's where the lesson's on us, I really get that this beautiful process that you've created around supporting people with the grief and with the gifts from all of that. I obviously could talk, and we could talk for hours more on this subject.
Yeah, and, you know, bringing it into the workplace, making people aware that their employees are their greatest asset is what I love to do. It's like, I wish I knew this when I was a CFO. It would have been completely different. We would have been more profitable. We would have been more amicable. It would have been the place everyone would have wanted to work. That's what I love about it.
And this is the stuff that through this show and through the other things that myself and my team do, we're hoping to keep spreading these messages, because I do believe that, you know, these little lights like I'm creating here, amongst all of the other noise, the negative noise, it's up to us to keep doing what we can to keep spreading these messages. And in that vein, if people were wanting to get hold of you after today's show, what's the best way of getting hold of you?
The easiest way is to go to thechastonscentre.com or email me at karen@karenchaston.com.au. Either or, it doesn't really matter. I'm always love to hear from everybody, but there's a lot of different places they can go to on the Chaston Centre. It takes them off to all of my different programs, whether it's for individuals or for businesses or for anyone. So it's really cool.
Fabulous. And this, I think, I asked this question of my guests, but I feel like it's a slightly different question, and I really feel that in my heart with some of the life lessons and paths that you've gone through. If you were to talk to your younger self, what sort of advice or gifts would you give to them?
Put yourself first. Love who you are. Trust your inner wisdom, and know that you are totally guided and you're protected. But take a little bit of time with some of your choices. You know, so many times we quickly make our decisions without really knowing all of the facts. And also, one other thing would be to listen. Listen to learn, not to respond. Because the more you learn, the better your choices will be, and the better your perspective will be. And understand that we live in a world of infinite possibilities, and maybe the better way isn't your way.
What wonderful and sage advice. And the other element I'd add into that would be around when you're listening, to listen to yourself as well, because especially when you're younger, it's about listening and, you know, the career and the this and the that and the success, and it's all, even more so with social media, it's all about the outward success and looking good, and that listening internally so that you actually hear those 9 different areas that you share so beautifully. You hear what you're responsible for and what you can create and promote and allow in your life. And I really love how those areas and those elements are things that with your framework and with your approach and the centre's approach, you can actually reach out and get that. If there was one thing that you were wanting to say to your younger self that was a CFO perhaps, because we have done a little bit of different through your incredible experience, what would that be?
Don't work so hard and don't drink as much. Actually use a difference avoidance tactic. Actually, you don't need avoidance. Yeah, look after yourself. Like, you know, I didn't look after myself, and we only have one vessel. You know, so often we live the, you know, the old adage of I spent my health to get my wealth, and now I'm spending my wealth to get my health. So just don't even waste your money on, you know, look after yourself. Really, because you're so much more energized, you're so much more productive. It was ridiculous the way that I didn't eat properly, I drank too much, and I certainly I didn't have my me time, whereas now I have a lot of me time. Me time is really important. At least an hour every day, everyone should have that time just to themselves. And if you don't have an hour a day, give me your calendar. I will find you 10 hours a week. And I've never, ever looked at anyone's calendar where I cannot find that hour a day. So, yeah, totally.
Wonderful. And I'm so glad I went there with that question, because, yeah, it's about finding that me time.
And prioritising that me time. It's not finding it, it's prioritising it, schedule it, and do not change it for anyone.
Yes, and that's a really important point too, about keeping the boundaries around the you time as well.
Yeah, that's probably another one. Learn how to say no, because more often than not, if you're saying yes, you're saying no to yourself, and that's not good.
That's also a very good truism as well, that the more that you're saying yes to other people, you're saying no to yourself. So as I said, we could share so many wonderful insights, and thank you so much for your time on the show today, Karen.
Thank you. I've loved being here, and I agree, we could chat all day long.
Well, it's amazing, and I again thank you for such valuable insights and such a wonderful way of looking at that process of grief and the blessings in change and difficult change. Yeah. But for the moment, we've run out of time. So thank you, Karen, and thank you to everybody for watching today. And so from my heart to your heart, be great, be fabulous, and be you.